Aloha Ukulele Club of Hawai'i. It's Sarah Maisel here. I am very excited to be going over our lesson for August 2024. Now for this one, we have our special guest, Aldrine Guerrero, who's going to be leading the songs with his good friend, Aaron Nakamura. And one of the things that I noticed right away in the music that they sent to us is that there is tablature. And I want to make sure that everybody understands and knows how to read tablature. So this little mini lesson is going to talk about tablature, why to use it, and like how it's useful, etc. So you can use tablature for a variety of different things. But the main thing is if you don't know how to read music, tablature can be a great way of still being able to play songs that you know and love, and ways to be able to write out licks if you don't know how to write music notation, so that you can remember them and play them later. So I want to make sure that you have page 1 of the August packet handy, because I'm going to be referring to that. So you'll notice on it that there are 4 lines. And I labeled the 4 lines, though those 4 lines are not always labeled, FYI. So you'll notice that the bottom line is you're supposed to be your G string. So each line represents a string of your instrument. So the line that's on the bottom is actually representing G. Then the C string is next, the E, and then the A, okay? I labeled it just to help remind you. It's not always going to be there. Not everybody notate. There's not necessarily a standard for tablature notation that everyone uses. So just FYI. Now you'll notice that I've written some numbers, and I wrote them in red just so it's easier to see on each line. So what that's showing you is those numbers represent what fret you should be playing. So if you notice, the very first one says 0, and it's on the C string. So therefore, you would just pick the single note on your C string. That's it. The next one says 2, and it's also on the C string. So what should we do? We should pick the 2nd fret of our C string. Beautiful. That's that one. The next note you'll see is on my E string, right? And then it's open. There's another note. It says 1. So on the same E string, you're going to put a finger down on the 1. The next note, I'm on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th note now in this sequence, is the 3rd fret on our E string. So I'll just put a finger down. Excellent. Moving forward, the next one, it's an open A string because it's a 0 on the A string. And then 2 on the, which is the 2nd fret, remember? And then 3. Now, the tablature doesn't tell you what finger to use. I just happen to be looking at the tablature itself and saying, okay, it looks like I'm not going past the 3rd fret. So I could probably get away with using my index on the 1st fret, my middle on the 2nd, my ring on the 3rd, and if I need, my pinky on the 4th. So that was sort of the finger assignment I chose. So again, tablature didn't tell me which fingers to use. It's just telling me what fret to play and on what string to play. Okay, so again, looking at it, we have our C open, just doing single notes. All right, and then again, C open, 2nd fret. I'm using my middle, open E string, and then 1 on the E, 3, open A, and then 2 on the A, and then 3. Nice. So with that, I'm only doing single notes here. So you can see really easy to sort of follow along. It'll take you a little bit of time to be able to do it quickly, but you can look down and you know exactly what notes need to be played. One downside to tablature is that it doesn't always give you the rhythmic notation, so you don't necessarily know how long each of those notes last. Now, we'll get more into that and closer to the end of this when we're going over the time to practice section of this page. But again, we're just trying to make sure we understand the basics. Now, looking over after our single notes, you should see that we've got well, you see it, I labeled it as chords, but you're looking at it and you're going, wow, everything's all in a line, right? So you'll notice that it's starting on the G string, open, or 0, 0, 0, 3, right? So that means that all at the same time, I'm going to be playing an open, 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 and then 3. So here, in tablature, that's how you can write your C chord. That's also when you hear a lot of us when we teach, we tend to say, for starting from the G string, the chord is open, 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 3. We're almost speaking in a tablature-like way because we're making it so that it's easy for you to be able to understand what is being held down. So that's for this one. Let's look at the next one. We have an open G. Let's go through it nice and slow. Open G. Then I have a 2, so I'm going to just use my middle for now. I have a 1, so I'll put a finger down. And then I have a 2, so I'll put a finger down. Hey, that is G7. And so that's because all of the numbers are all in a straight line, that tells me it's a chord versus before, when we were doing the single notes, it was just one note at a time. So that's how you can tell if you're supposed to be playing single notes versus a chord with your tablature. Okay, so we've gone over single notes and chords. Now there are some other notation things that you will sometimes see. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about that. One symbol that you'll see is a diagonal line with an S over it. This is saying to slide. So in the case of my tablature, what I have done is I have got my 1st fret on my C string, and I'm supposed to slide to the 5th fret. So that for me is you pluck, slide, pluck, slide. That was a bad slide, but like that. Kind of a big slide, but you get the idea that you start here, pluck it, and then you slide to whatever is written on the tablature there. So when you see that line with an S, and sometimes it doesn't have the S, sometimes it's just that diagonal line, that's going to tell you again to slide. So you'll pick the first note, and then you'll maintain pressure and slide up. The next thing that you will commonly see, it looks almost like a parenthesis, but on its side, and it'll either have an H or a P. Now, sometimes you will see the H or the P missing and only see that little arc over your or in between your numbers. So let's take a look at what is labeled hammer-on. So you'll notice that on the E string, I have got a 0, I have a little parenthesis with an H, and then it ends on 1. And then I have another parenthesis with H, and it ends on 3. This is a double hammer-on that I have written out. But the main thing to remember with this is it's telling you it wants you to hammer on the note. So if I was to do that, for those of you that have never done hammer-ons, what we are going to do is I am on my E string. So I'm going to pluck my open E, and then I'm going to start by just doing the 1st fret. So it's going to be open, and I am actually taking my index and hammering it on. So again, pluck, pluck, and pluck. So that's one hammer-on. The big thing to remember with this is that you need to be as accurate as possible. If your finger goes to the side of the string like this, like you're not going to get a strong hammer-on, or it's going to be, it's not going to be clean, versus always making sure I am perfectly on the string, making the string connect to this piece of metal here, your fret. Okay? Then I need to hammer on another. So this one, I'm only plucking once. Again, open 1, 3. 3 again, open 1, 3. This technique can be difficult, but I thought I'd bring it up anyway. 3 again. Again, I'm only plucking once, and here we go. There. So with that hammering on, if you see, again, this is really me just trying to show you that if you see what looks like a parenthesis or an arc with an H, it wants you to hammer on the note. You can also pluck it, but it has a different sound, and it also might not be as fast, right? I can do that quickly versus, I think that's as fast as I can go, versus. So just keep that in mind. So whenever you see that symbol and an H, and sometimes the H isn't there, sometimes it's just that symbol, and if you notice that you're going up in numbers, that usually indicates it's going to be a hammer-on. All right, so going 0 to 1, 1 to 3. That's going to be a hammer-on versus numbers going backward. So if you look over at what is labeled pull-offs, you'll see on the A string that we have got the 3rd fret, that arc with a P, and then another, the 2, and then an arc with a P, and then 0. This means we are pulling off, and you're literally pulling the string. So let me show you that. I've got my 3 and 2 already set up on the string. I'm only going to be plucking once, and I'm actually taking my ring with my middle still staying on the 2nd fret. I am plucking basically with my, and you want to try to keep this finger as still as you can as you're plucking so that you don't bend your note. And then you'll just do that with the middle finger too. So pluck once. Beautiful. 1, 2, 3, again. And I'm just moving my hand away so you see I'm only plucking once. 3, 4. 1, 2, we'll do it again. Beautiful. So whenever you see that symbol, that is going to be your pull off. And you're literally plucking the string with the fretting hand when you're doing that. So if we look back at the hammer-ons, I had open 1, 3, and then I did 3, 2, open, right? So you can tell if it doesn't have the P and you see the numbers descending, in our example, it's 3, 2, and open, it's probably going to be indicating pull-offs, okay? Now, sometimes if you see a really long arc going over from one number across 4 numbers, that's something that is either going to be legato. It's typically going to be legato, actually, because it's telling you it wants all of the notes to be played smoothly together. You don't always see that written in tablature, which is why I did not write it out for you. You see it definitely in music notation, however, but just something to keep in mind. The other thing that you see in music notation, but you don't always see in tablature, is sometimes you'll see a musical note with a little tiny dot above it. What that usually means is staccato. You're supposed to play the note as opposed to legato, which means all of the notes get to be smooth and into each other versus staccato. So again, you don't always see it written in tablature, but it's good to be aware of the note qualities. So what I do have written down that I often get questions about are something called tied notes. Notice that I have the number 3 on my A string, and I have a long arc going to a 3 that's in parenthesis. Now, with this, when you see the parenthesis, you're going to go, why is that there? So what that's telling me is that the note is tied, meaning that the note is longer, okay? So if I had music notation above it, that would be very handy. But again, tablature doesn't always have that. Where I've got my note happening on the 3rd fret, I'm going to pick it, and I hold the note, because the note is continuing and it's longer. That 3 in parenthesis is just letting me know that I'm not picking that note again, that whatever time length those 2 notes are, it's just all one pluck, okay? So that's what a tied note basically means, is that you are elongating and holding the note. Usually a lot of times tied notes tend to happen over 2 separate bars. Not always, but a lot of times that's when you'll see it. Bars are also measures for those of you out there that go, wait, what is that? So those are sort of the big things that you'll see. You'll see slides, which is usually a diagonal line with an S. Sometimes the S is not there. Then you have hammer-ons or pull-offs, which is usually a little arc between two notes, and it's either got an H or a P. Sometimes it doesn't, though, because again, there's no like one way to write tablature. But if the numbers are ascending, that's probably a hammer-on. If it's descending, they are probably pull-offs. And then you have tied notes, which generally are written where you've got a long arc and then a number in parenthesis. Sometimes you don't have the long arc, but if you see the number in parenthesis after the single note, those notes go together and you don't pluck the note again. Now, why am I telling you all about this? Well, if you look at the packet for August, you'll notice that Aldrine's going to be going over some songs that have some fun picking parts, and they are tabbed out. Now, I decided to pick just what he had written for the first line of Brown-Eyed Girl. So you'll see here, what I did is I actually gave you the music notation above the tablature. This is just to sort of allow us to know the rhythmic timing of what this should be for those of you that know how to read music notation or just understand the rhythm of quarter notes, eighth notes, etc. Now, I'm not going to get into reading music notation right now because this is just about being able to make it through some tablature. Now, in the packet, you'll see that music notation is not supplied. So generally what that means is you either need to know the song or Aldrine's going to play the phrase and you have to be able to mimic it. And it will be easier for you to mimic it because you will at least know where to put your fingers. You'll know what fret to be on. So it's not as scary as somebody playing something for you and you have no reference. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Now, one thing that I think is really cool that I see that he's done is that we are going to be playing the same pattern on your, now see, I took away the, you'll notice it says tab underneath the music notation, and I took away where everything's labeled. So hopefully you can look up above and you'll see, remember it's G, C, E, A. And if we look, the E string, you're playing 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. So knowing that, I'm going to start with my index on the 3rd fret because I'm not going any lower, so might as well, that's my lowest note currently. So I'm going to do 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. I ended up using my index, my ring, and my pinky, but it doesn't really matter. Maybe I've used my index, middle, and pinky, but it doesn't really matter, right? So again, looking at this, starting with my index, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. Now, I'm not picking yet. I'm just trying to make sure I know where the notes are on my fretboard first. 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. Okay, great. Looking over at the next measure, you'll see 3, 5, 7, 5, 3 again, but it's on the A string. 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. Nice. Look at the 3rd measure. You come back over to your E string, and it's the same thing, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. Excellent. Let's just try that for now. Now, I'm going to play the phrase for you. It's something that many of you probably already know. Okay, so I have 3, 5, 7, 5, 3 over, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3, and move it over, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. Nice. 1, 2, we'll do it again. And 3, 5, 7, 5, 3, over. And over again. Nice. So we've got the beginning of that phrase, and it's great because how he's got it lined up is you're just playing the same pattern on 2 strings. And tablature is neat because you could see the pattern right away. Not every song lines up so beautifully that way, but this one does, which is really nice. Now, the last measure is different. We go to the 2nd fret, and we're on a different string. What string are we on? C. So we're on the C string. I tend to shift. I'll put my index on that 2nd fret. and then do 2, and then it's 2 on the next string. You have some options. So you could play this note and then do your middle ring, and then pinky on the 5. So it looks like this. Sorry. I could do that, where I'm using all 4 fingers. I could also flatten this index finger, which is what I accidentally tried to do, and do that. Technically, if you are a classical player, that would not be allowed. You would want to make sure you used 1 finger and that you don't squish your finger down, but honestly, it's however you want to get the job done for this particular phrase. So let's practice that phrase together. Try playing it however you want, whether it's squishing or whether it's adding a finger. Either one is fine. Just try to be consistent. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. One last time. Beautiful. Whole phrase. Let's start. I'm going to start with my index now based on the 3rd fret, and I'm going to go through and do 3, 5, 7, 5, 3, starting from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next string. And over. 2nd fret. Yay! One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. A string. And E string. Shift to 2 on the C. Nice. So with that, it's really handy, right? I knew the song, I knew the rhythm. Now I can read the rhythmic notation, so that was easy for me to be able to kind of sort out. However, if you know it, you're probably able to follow along pretty easily because you know what fret number we're playing. Another beautiful thing about tablature is that there's multiple places you can play a single note. I could play a G here. I could play that same G here. I could play that same G here, right? Like there's or even, actually, no, that's too high. But again, I can play that same G all over the place on this instrument. The tablature is great because it can tell me which place the person who wrote it out is intending you to play it. But then again, like you could also just make your own choices too. So for this one, it was written out specifically so that you have a pattern that you're moving across your strings. So you'll notice, again, if you look in the packet for what Aldrine and Aaron sent to us for Ukulele Club, that you'll want to make sure to use your ear, but take some time to look at, each page that has tablature on it. Try to pick through it. Even if you don't know the song, get your fingers kind of used to being in a certain area and try it out. The other thing, too, that I also want to point out is that you notice, especially in the version that I have down here that says time to practice, over my music notation, you'll see chords listed. That's telling me what chord is going to be playing. So if I'm going to sing say, bum, bum, 2, 3, 4, bum, 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 bum. Next measure, da, 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 da. Da, 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 and it repeats, right? If you're familiar with the song, it basically repeats again. So that's telling you what chords are happening. And if I remember correctly in the packet, he does actually have the chords listed so that if you don't want to pick, you can just play the chords that are happening underneath. And the tablature does have measure lines, so you know how long each phrase is, or at least how many beats it's going to be, because you've got those measure lines listed. So I hope you have fun going through our August packet. I know Aldrine's going to walk us through a bunch of different stuff for that. So we are really excited. August 17th, 9 a.m. Hawaii time, noon Pacific if you are joining us via the live stream. Though hopefully we can get a bunch of folks at Windward Mall so we can cheer and all play together. But I know not everybody can make it to Kaneohe. So those of you guys online, we are really excited that you'll be joining us. But it's going to be a really fun club. I think we're going to be rocking the house. So I hope you enjoy working through some of the tablature prior to club. And hopefully this gave you enough of a great start that you can even go find other tablature that you've always wanted to try and been intimidated by.